And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of the Middle of the Pack Racing League Cruising USA GR86 Championship for 2023, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today marks round 4 of 12 as we wrap up the Big State Cup here in the state of Texas at the Austin-based circuit of the Circuit of the Americas. Acronymed to COTA in short, this is a circuit like no other when it comes to motor racing in the United States of America, for it is a young circuit, but with its youth belies greatness in the fact that this circuit is the first purpose-built road racing circuit for Formula 1 in the United States. And whilst trying to revive Formula 1 in the process of the early 2020s and also in the late portion of the 2010s after the disaster that was the Indianapolis 2006 Grand Prix, this circuit has done more than that in bringing to life a circuit like no other when it comes to the combination of corner sequences, straights and elevation changes, which means it has something of everything, but at the same time it also has its own unique characteristics. And what better place to play host to our first feature race round of the season as our drivers get ready to go racing, and it's not long before they'll be taken to the tarmac in anger and immediately going into the racing action. For as you can see, our schedule on the right hand side of your screen, tonight in the times of Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT or Universal Coordinated Time UTC, we only have one session on the calendar for today, and that is our feature race, which will be in just under 30 minutes time, and that will be 45 minutes in duration. It'll be longer than our standard races, and of course with the longer change there comes the all-important battling aspects combined with the strategy, and who can master to put it together, plus the pace out of the circuit to bring home the ultimate win and perhaps wrap up their Big State Cup on the ultimate high, which is to be the class champion within each of the given cups. Well, as our drivers get ready to go racing, let's take you through a little bit of housekeeping. We've already taken you through our schedule for tonight, but also let's tell you a little bit about the broadcast. The racing action you are seeing on screen is not live. It occurred earlier this week as of Wednesday the 1st of February, but we're bringing it to you as if it were live on this Sunday the 5th of February 2023. In the quarantine booth you have myself. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX11 or Brit of the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And this broadcast is being brought to you via YouTube on the YouTube channel titled TX11 TX, alternatively Paul Walsh, depending on which you search, you'll find the channel there. Unfortunately, if you are a Twitch user, you're not able to tune in today via twitch.tv/TX11, and that is for the simple reason that unfortunately our restream service that we typically use to broadcast to two media platforms is not currently available, so we decided to go for the sacrifice and move to YouTube specifically for today, but hopefully we'll be back to business as usual come round number 5. But whilst we may have half the number of broadcast avenues available, we're certain to be doubling the race in action here for the simple reason this circuit, as you can see in the background, with its wide array of spaces into each and every corner, is a circuit that naturally invites overtaking, and with our cars of course being relatively slow compared to the beast that this circuit was designed for, Formula 1, that means that this circuit is definitely going to cater to the slow but slipstream orientated and highly grippy Toyota Gazoo Racing 86 machines, and who will come out on top come the finish. That will be the ultimate challenge. But speaking of the challenge, of course, as we see it and say hello there to Ju in the YouTube chat, and hello to all of you tuning in, of course, and I hope you're all doing well and having a great weekend so far. Also including Logan McKenzie and Jason Landry. Well, let's look to the challenge of the season ahead as a whole and give you a recap of where we've been so far. So, of course, we started off back on the 11th of January at Watkins Glen in the state of New York. Our first cup being the Big State Cup and a celebration of the larger states in the 50 states of the United States of America. And what better place to kick off than at Watkins Glen International. And there, at the Cup Classic circuit, we saw it was Toyota's meet NASCAR in the fact that it was mostly full throttle out for the entirety of the lap, and it led to a thrilling conclusion which saw Landry take the win in the end in the Pro Class and overall. Wind the clock forward a week, we made our way from New York to the state of California for the first of a doubleheader in the wonderful Western Coast State, and there at Laguna Seca we saw our drivers avoid the dust and the dirt and make their way through the corkscrew to rise on high, and despite an early safety car bringing an abrupt halt to the proceedings, we very quickly got back underway, and again it was Landry who went the way ahead of the rest of the field, but also we did see the rise of Samuel Berardi in the AM class. Then from the 18th of January we wound ourselves a week forward to the 25th of January and continued in California, and last time out it was in the city of Long Beach, in downtown Long Beach, and well there we had an absolute one to remember and the moment of the season so far, indeed that one's going to stay in the minds of everybody who tuned in to round number 3, Micah Hendricks' pass through the fountain on Tanner Dibble. What a way to make a pass. You do not go too wide through the fountain. Hendricks found a way to sail on through on the inside of the fountain, and we will never forget it, and that has set up the tone for today's race at COTA on the 1st of February. But after today we'll be taking a week's break before returning on the 15th of February to commence the Midwest Cup, and this will be a celebration of all the states in the Midwest, and we'll be starting off in the state of Indiana with the Indianapolis circuit, and that will be on the 15th of February there in the first sprint of that cup. We'll then make our way for the 22nd of February over to the state of Ohio for the Mid-Ohio Sports Car course at a very classical circuit in the United States with all its winding corner sequences, before we then make our way for the Belle Isle, the Detroit Grand Prix at Belle Isle, and that will of course be in the city of Detroit in the state of Michigan in round number 7 on the 1st of March, and that will be our second street circuit calendar of the season. Of course, Long Beach being our first one last time out, and then we'll be wrapping up the Midwest Cup on the 8th of March with our second feature race of the season, and that'll be at Road America, the classic American circuit, and indeed there in the state of Wisconsin, it will be about the run through the national park. But with round number 8 concluding, we'll then be taking another week's break before returning for the third and final cup of the season, and that'll be the Southern State Cup. As it says on the tin, it will be a celebration of the states of the South, and we start off with the state of Georgia for Road Atlanta, the roller coaster ride of a road racing circuit, and that'll be on the 22nd of March for what will be there our 7th sprint of the season, and then we'll be making our way from the state of Georgia to the state of Alabama for the Barber Motorsports Park there on round number 10 on the 29th of March, and then for our penultimate round of the season, our final sprint round of the season, we make our way to the state of Florida for a doubleheader in Florida, and we'll be at the Sebring circuit, of course, running on the venerable tarmac of the old airfields, and that'll be on the 5th of April for our final sprint, and on the 12th of April we'll bring the entire curtain down on the season schedule with the run at Daytona Road Course, and that'll be our third and final feature in round number 12. But we've got plenty to look forward to, not just the conclusion in the Sunshine State. And today here, of course, we are in the state of Texas, and, well, there's only two things that are certain, they say, in Texas, and that is death and taxes. But I like to say there's a third thing that's certain, and that is classic racing as well. But speaking of classic racing, it's a classic in the championship standings so far, as we look to our pro class going into tonight. And we can see here that James Carr leads the way by an advantage of 9 points over Micah Hendricks. The two of them have been back and forth, albeit in the absence of Jason Landry last time out. It means they're both getting a free ticket to try and compete for the win, with Jason Landry being a runaway winner over the course of the first 2 rounds, but it was the arrival of Micah Hendricks there who flew through to take the win at Long Beach, and now James Carr, with that advantage, will be looking to have a strong result to wrap up the cup. However, behind them, Aaron Lahr only a further 2 points behind, will also be trying to get into the mix there for P2, with Jason Landry in P4 on 104 points. Now there's going to be a huge overturn required here to take home the cup, but also focusing on that overall championship. James Logsdon in P5 there on 97 points, slightly off of the top 4, but at the same time 12 points clear of Tanner Dibble, with Dibble having the threat of Francois Schinck a further point behind. And then we have Jerome Bajulaz on 81 points ahead of Carl Ranieri, with Matteo Giorgio completing the top 10. Outside the top 10, best the rest, Jordan Butler on 68 points, 1 point clear of John Lauzon, with Carlos Vila there yet to get any points on the board, but we hope to see him join us on circuit in the near future. Then coming to the Pro-Am standings, we can see here in the Pro-Am class, it's a much closer pitch at the very top. Alberto Alvarez tops the standings there on 110 points, but it's Logan McKinsey who is 2 points behind, and with all the drama at Long Beach last time out, whether it came to McKinsey, Craig Parks, Donald Sipe or Edwin Offre, it was Alberto Alvarez who steered clear of the disaster and the traffic to be able to return to the top of the standings, but by such a small margin, it could go either way right now between the pair, and meanwhile behind them, Craig Parks in P3, of course, winner last time out in class at Long Beach, will be looking to try and have another win today to get a little bit closer to the top 2 and buffet his overall championship standings. Then we have Donald Sepek, a further win is there, total of at 9 points behind, and a good portion of 14 points clear of Edwin Offre, and it does look as though right now the top 2 are close together, and the rest of the field is starting to separate apart, albeit with the variability of the results, they could be coming back together after this round. Outside the top 5, Samuel Cranmel on 56 points, only 1 clear of Milan Harris, with Jonathan Ballard there in at P8 on 44 points, 4 clear of Kirk Lane, and Ilya Speaker there completed the top 10. Best of the rest, Adrian Fedorowski there on 30 points, 1 clear of Lee Porter, and then we have Krista Tarango and Carlos Hathcock completing the run of the standings, with Jermaine Warren, John Wilding and Justin Wiley yet to get any points on the board, but what we can confirm is that I believe that Jermaine Warren has taken over the official stewarding role for this series, so you'll not be seeing him take to the circuit anymore over the course of this series, and we will miss seeing him out on the circuit, but at the same time we do appreciate him offering up his time in order to act as the official steward. And we can also see there John Wilding on 0 points, but he will be in attendance tonight for the first time and looking to go racing in Angham. We look forward to seeing that. Then we come on to the AM class, and we can see here that Daniel Sedino leads the way in the AM class with a similar complexion here, much like the Pro Championship standings. Daniel Sedino has been the runaway leader so far, albeit he's been gradually reeled back in by P2 man Samuel Bernardi, who has made it 2 wins on the bounce so far. Can he make it a third on the bounce and potentially bring home the Big State Cup in the final round of said cup? That'll be his challenge. But he'll also have the challenge of Fernando Takahashi and Mark Senegal, tied there on 82 points, with Takahashi only ahead based on result countback, and it could go either way for the pair of them there in the hunt for P3, and also trying to reel down the top two. Jack Davis had a good P5 there on 70 points, only 2 clear of Auguste Blondel, with Dan Witchuk there a further 6 points behind, and 4 points clear of Roger Ganesh. In Henneberry and Billman DaCosta complete the top 10, but the key theme here is outside of the top 3, it is incredibly close with regards to who's going to be finishing inside that top 5. We have outside the top 10 then, best of the rest, Rodney Falcon 48 points, also trying to get back into the mix, with Nick Bader picking up a great result last time out in Long Beach, and we look forward to seeing how he gets on again tonight after a podium finish. And then we have Glenn Bratton on 45 points there, 1 point off of Bader, with PG Christensen, Ines Usul, Dan Ocaranta, Albert Brand and Spencer Cockayne completing the run of the standings. And we do have both what is Elias Montanes and also the other member of the Montanes family yet to take part in this series. We look forward to potentially seeing them come out onto the circuit today. But then when we come onto the team's championship, we can see here Sunday GT Turtles leading the way by 17 points over Beaver Buzz Energy, but the rivalry between the two teams could not be closer in the fact that we also have Team Bear Pope there only a further what is 9 points behind, and the top 3 only separated by a margin at just slightly off of 30 points at the moment. To be a bit more precise, 26 points if my maths is correct in my mind. And then we can see MOP at Jedi there a little bit further back of 17 points off in P4, trying to keep away Hassel's Motorsports there, who are a further 14 behind. With the top 5 so close, it becomes even closer when you look to the run to top 5 with Pan Am Racing there in P6 158 points, only 3 off of the top 5 and a further 5 points clear of DNA Motorsports. Then a sizable gap to Bear Pope Zero, had a bit of misfortune last time out at Long Beach, or as you'd imagine they'd be right back up there inside the top 7 with Rockefeller White 114 points and Rockefeller Pink a bit further back in on what is 89 points, completing the top 10. MOP Sif, middle of the pack Racing Sif, and QZ Motorsports complete the team standings. And as we look from the standings then, let's come on to our circuit for today. Where's none other, of course, than the COTA Grand Prix circuit. 94 is the circuit of the Americas, located in Austin, in Texas, in the US of A. This circuit, as you can see from the circuit map provided to us by SimRacingWiki.com, is a circuit like no other, given the combination. Now, it has borrowed elements from multiple circuits across the globe, and indeed, if you look to the sequence of corners through turns 3 through to 9, and also at the latter half of the lap, where you'll be seeing some similarities, firstly, to Silverstone's Grand Prix circuit in the United Kingdom, and also in the latter half of the lap, you'll be seeing similarities to the Hockenheimring Baden-Württemberg circuit in Germany. But the key thing about this circuit is with that combination and also its unique factors as well, including the run up the hill into turn number 1, it is going to be a circuit that puts our drivers through the ultimate test. For as they make their way up the hill towards turn 1, it's going to be a 113 metre rise into an inclined braking zone where they'll go into a very tight hairpin before being spat out in the run down turn 2 and charging through the right-hander into 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9, the sweeping serpentine sequence of corners where our drivers will need to balance speed, balance brake control and bring it all together as the average apex speed gradually declines as they make their way closer and closer towards turn number 8. Coming out to turn 8, however, they'll charge through turn 9, make their way through the Kinka 10 and downhill into the braking zone of the second hairpin at turn number 11 before they make their way down the 1 kilometre straight in the charge all the way down towards turn number 12, and that's where we'll see the slipstream really have a major factor, and we'll see those great overtaking moments into the turn 12 hairpin. With the 2 hairpins connected by 1 kilometre straight, then the nature of the lap begins to become much slower in comparison as our drivers make their way through the stadium sections of turns 13 through to 19, where they'll come through the sharp right-hander of 13 before making their way through 14, braking hard through the kink of 15 into another hairpin at 16, and then going through the double right apex of 17 and 18, coming charging down the hill of 19, where they've got to be careful with track limits on corner exit and carry as much speed up towards the final corner before braking hard for the final hairpin and make their way onto that start-finish straight to only do it again. Now, with the circuit covered, let's quickly come on to our race rules, because they are going to be different for today, of course. Now, we can see here, in terms of setup, drivers shall run a fixed setup, providing middle of the pack racing league, the MPRL, and that's always being provided, and that will continue to be the way all the way through the season. And in general, car fuel loads have been restricted to 35 litres for all races, including this one. Now, what that will mean for this feature race, firstly, our drivers do not have a mandatory pit stop, and you can see there is no mention of a mandatory pit stop, but given the 35 litres of fuel, we are expecting our drivers to come into the pits at some point in the race to take on fuel, or they are going to have to do an intense amount of fuel saving, but given the fuel tank available, it does mean that they do really have to have that pit stop. In terms of how the race will start, it'll start via a grid start, as is the tradition. Each driver shall have 2 fast repairs available if they are involved in an accident, a bump and a scrape. A driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 18 or more instant points, and should there be a major incident during the first 30 minutes of the race, a safety car may be deployed. That is different from our sprint races, where the safety car has only been available on the opening lap for major incidents. Instead, it'll be the first 30 minutes where we may see the safety car, and and we may see it up to 2 times if needed. Now, so you may be asking, well, how will our drivers take to the grid in terms of qualifying? Given there is no qualifying session, they will line up in reverse championship order based on their championship class, and we will see the pros ahead of the primes and the primes ahead of the AMs, and it will be reversed in class. So as a result, the drivers who are at the very top of the respective classes, they'll be starting at the back of their class group. Meanwhile, those who are at the bottom will be starting on pole, or on the front row, if you will. But as we look from our rules then to the circuit side, once again here coming to our live pictures, well, most of our drivers are now set to go racing, as we see John Wilding from DNA Motorsports making his way into the pit lane and get himself parked up, and we look to Logan McKenzie making his way on down and around there. But as our drivers get themselves set, this is going to be one of those circuits as well which really does put to the test all our drivers' abilities as demonstrated in the first 3 races of the day, and Logan McKenzie will not be wanting to lose the rear end. They're coming out of 8 into 9 when he goes racing, for the simple reason that's going to be a very costly mistake, as we see Albert Brown from middle of the pack, Jedi making his way down towards turn number 11 here, and you can see that theme of just how wide the run into the hairpin is as he loses the rear end there. And I think some overheated tyres or just some cold tyres, depending on how much he's been pushing them, just not giving him the grip he so desires, and that is going to be a big theme here as well, given the number of direction changes and such the severity of the run into the apex of the hairpins. Our drivers will need to balance that rear end of the car as much as possible, because remember, these cars weighing quite little and have 220 horsepower available to them, especially tuned by North America's Toyota division, and that is the Gazoo Racing North America division of Toyota. Therefore, this Cup car, which comes in at about £1 million in all for the dedicated Cup Series for 2023 in the real world of motorsport, as replicated in iRacing, is a tricky car to play with, but it's also a fun one, as our drivers make the way then to the grid for our one and only race for today. Now, as we do bring up the grid, are we able to see the grid in its full flavour? No, unfortunately, we are not able to see it, so don't take those places as gospel there, ladies and gentlemen. Instead, our grid is now forming up, but unfortunately, we can't walk you down through the grid directly, given the fact we have a limitation of an iRacing replay file. But instead, what we can do is look to the grid as it is forming, and John Lauzon will be starting on overall pole position in what is there, the P1 spot for the Pro class, and also the overall grid, given the way the runner results have gone for him over the course of this season so far. And well, for John Lauzon, it is all about trying to turn things around today. He's looking for some good luck. He had a disaster at Laguna Seca. He had awful luck at Long Beach, but can he turn it around for the 4th time after the difficulties that were in the season open and having a better day today? Meanwhile, looking a bit further back here, 2 our AMs, Billman DaCosta and the 283 Bear Pope Zero machine, all ready and set to go. We're just waiting on a couple more drivers to take their slot on the grid. Out of our 31 drivers, 29 of them are already set. Only a couple more to make their way onto the grid. In fact, the gridding process is complete, and we await the lights. And it's lights out and away we go for round number 4 of the Cruising USA GR86 Championship here on iRacing, as John Lauzon gets a brilliant start in the run up the hill towards turn number 1. But as they charge up into the braking zone here, you can see already multiple wide in multiple positions here, as we've got James Logston battling up the inside there. Francois Schinck into the braking zone. Meanwhile, further back, Logan McKenzie going a bit deep and wide to avoid contact there as they come through turn 1 down to 2. Henneberry as well getting some ground. Glenn Bratton as Billman DaCosta fights on from behind, and further back Dan Vitchuk there, as we can see 4 wide here. Vitchuk, Sedino, Davies, and also Rodney Felker, with Vitchuk going around the outside of Felker, but Davies, meanwhile Sedino battling side by side 2 wide as they make the way to turns 3 and 4 here, but they settle it on down. Meanwhile, Craig Barks continuing the fight with Alberto Alvarez as they come up through the long seekers, winding the way out towards turns 7 and 8, the tricky 2 corners, as they get ready to battle onto the brakes here. But as they make the way on through now, Parks backs out behind Alvarez, and of course these two go toe-to-toe for the championship crown, as meanwhile a bit further behind Nick Bader here, having a great start and now trying to gain a bit more ground, but goes deep coming out of 9, and we've all got to drive around. That's Albert Brand who's lost the rear of the car. And I wonder if the middle of the pack Jedi driver was assisted in that turnaround. Unfortunately, we can't tell you whether he was given a bit of assistance, but instead we look to the front of the field as John Lauzon's going overly deep at turn number 11, and we have a new leader in this race. DNA Motorsports' is Jordan Butler takes the lead, but now he's got the long charge down the 1 kilometre back straight as they make the way down towards turn number 12. And further behind, we've got a car around there, and that looks to be, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, Adam Ballard, who's had a run around. But meanwhile, Butler here having to defend into turn 12. They get ready to battle onto the anchors here for the first time in anger, and as they head on through the left-hander, well, Lauzon looks on, but he can't find a way on through, and they all stay as they are, as we see James Logston there continue to try and make some ground against Jason Landry, but Landry having a good start as they make the way into turn number 13. Carr Ranieri here on the outside, and the Pepto-Bismol privateer machine, the 84 car, battling with Schinck. Schink's got the inside, but he'll be on the outside for 15 into 16. This is going to be tricky for the pair of them as they come on through. For the simple reason, as the driver goes round, that's Tanner Dibble, loses the rear end of the car, and also Jason Landry's had a major off there what is turn number 16. Two drivers getting it wrong, two of the best pros there in terms of on paper from 2022 lose. And that goes to show you that COTA can catch out even the very best of the best. But as Gus Blondell there tries to go around the outside of Dan Vitchik into turn 16, he gets it done and holds him off in the run to turn 17 and 18 here as they make their way through the final couple of quarters to complete this opening lap. But it's been a dramatic open lap, and it's not over yet as Mark Senegal has to defend there versus Fernando Takahashi gets his elbows out into turn 19 as they gradually come off a quarter apex and make their way up towards turn number 20. But as the drivers roll their way up the hill into the left-hander here, now you can see behind there Tanner Dimble trying to quickly get back through the order as the DNA Motorsports driver gets clear of Fernando Takahashi, and they head on to lap number 2. So after one lap, it is Jordan Butler from DNA Motorsports who leads this race ahead of John Lauzon P2. Carr in P3, making a lot of ground early on. James Logston P4 as he battles hard versus Francois Schink. Schink now into P4 as they make their way through turn number 2. Logston loses the position. Micah Hendricks in P6 ahead of James Carr P7 as they come into the next sequence of quarters into the Serpentine S. But as they come on through, Carr ahead of Aaron Lahr and Edwin Offred P9, the leading prime driver, and it's Logan McKenzie in P10 behind him there in the Tide Privateer machine. As then best of the rest in P11 is Kirk Lane, who's had a great start to this race. Lane hasn't put a foot wrong for Bear Pope Zero and is continuing to just dig in, but as he makes his way there through the left-hander of turn number 6, coming up into 7, 8, 9 now. Bear Pope Zero's driver's going to be careful there as Alvarez continues to try and put the pressure on. And meanwhile, if you're wondering who your AM leader is, it's this man from Bear Pope Zero in ahead of Berry, who continues to lead the class as he makes his way through turn number 9 and down towards 10, 11 he goes. But as he makes his way down the hill, more drama here as Daniel Zdino's had an off there at what looks to be turn 7 into 8, and the Hassel's Motorsports driver that is going to heavily impact his championship aspirations as he makes his way on down the hill. But as he comes down now, of course, he'll be keeping his head down and thinking about what else he can do as the race goes on, but still plenty to fight for from all our drivers, including James Logston here, who finds himself at a side-by-side with Hendricks as they come down towards turn number 12. Hendricks on the inside here. I think Logston may just give this one up for now, given the fact they've got a lot of race to go. There's no need to fight it too hard too early on, but as they make the way through 12, Logston stays on the outside. Hendricks does not get the run he needs out the corner, and Logston's going to force this into a 2 wide into 13, which will cost them a lot of time versus Schink in front as they make their way out the right-hander, and Hendricks backs off, looks for the cutback here. I think Hendricks playing the long game as meanwhile Alberto Alvarez trying to fight hard here versus Jason Landry. Remember, they only score points for overall position, but in the Prime and the AM classes they get bonus points to be on the podium, 3 for first, 2 for second and 1 for third. But as the drivers make the way around, it encourages all of our classes to battle one another just as much as it does battle in amongst their own classmates. But as the drivers come on through here through 17 and 18, it does look as though it's settled down for a brief moment, but meanwhile one driver here is trying to get back into the fight. Rodney Felker on the inside there of Dan Vitchik as they make the way through 13 up towards 14, with that through what is 16 there into 17, 18 we should say, as Francois Schink is into the pit lane from what was at the time P4. So I think Schink's decided to come in early. Is there some damage on the car potentially for a bit of contact much earlier we haven't spotted? Well, either way, it has not worked out for Francois Schink unless he's trying to go for a very early undercut, which theoretically could be possible. But meanwhile, speaking of possibilities, Coroneri looks at the possibility of a turn 1 move. Hot on the brakes there versus John Lauzon, and he gets it done as they make the way up the corner and downhill into turn 2. We've got a car around, that's Micah Hendricks, who's gone all the way round, pointed it back in the right direction, done a 360 with it, but that's cost him a lot of places there, dropping him all the way down to P13 from the battle inside the top 5. Meanwhile, Carl Ranieri takes P2 off of John Lauzon, and we ride on board and look back here from the rear of the Privateers machine as he heads towards the second half of the Serpentine. Now coming up towards turn 6, 7 now, and in towards 8 they go. Well, the challenge here will be, of course, given Lauzon is so close and eager to try and make the ground he's just lost, will Lauzon come back in right at the very end of this lap? We'll have to wait to see as they come down for the kink of 10 and into 11. But that gap right now 6 tenths. So you think that's going to be a huge gap, of course, as we can see there, Pim Loop in the YouTube chat saying go Beaver Buzz, and definitely cheering on the likes of Micah Hendricks with that spin, and John Lauzon just behind us here in the camera as they make the way out to turn number 11. Now that gap standing at 7.5 tenths, but by the end of this stretch it is going to compress slightly given the slipstream. Although I say that it doesn't look as though Ranieri getting a really good run off the corner. I wonder if Lauzon's doing some fuel saving here in order to try and stretch out what will be his opening stint as they make the way down towards turn number 12, because right now Lauzon is not closing at all. Instead he's just hanging there back, and meanwhile we see Edwin Offred here, your lead prime driver, and trying to fend off Logan McKenzie as they make the way into the turn 12 braking zone, and a bit obscured there by the road surface and the elevation of the road. But as they come out of the corner now, just in front, James Carr and Aaron Lar going toe to toe, coming out of 12 into 13, and James Carr gets it parked there quite nicely and really holds the position of P5, but he's going to also be worried about the fact that Lar right now is bringing a load of primes into the mix behind them. And looking a bit further back, Alberto Alvarez here in a side-by-side round the outside of turn 16 versus Kirk Lane. This is going to be important here for Alvarez. He needs to get this done into 17. I think Lane may fall back. He may look for the cutback run as we look down from our drives from the spectator tower, which is in the stadium section here. Absolutely beautiful camera angle here. Gives you a sense of perception of the run off Canberra, the corner. But as they make their way down, you see Craig Parks and Jason Landry also battling through 19. Landry up the inside, Craig Parks being given the outside position, has the back of the speed, and in return of Alvarez and Lane go free wide under braking. There's contact Alvarez. He goes into the side of Parks as a result. It's a small tap, but it sends Parks wide. But they continue to fight it as they all rejoin. And as they come charge on through, Lane there backing off a little bit. I think cognizant of the fact that he set off the domino effect, if you will, as they make the way onto the next lap. But respectful there from Kurt Lane to back off and let Parks retake his position. But Alvarez there grabbing it with both hands and saying, right, that's mine, as they make the way to turn 1. Lane's going to try and come back here, but Parks is going to have all the room on the outside. He will lose that initially, but now he'll get the overspeed in the run down towards turn number 2, and Micah Hendricks closing up to the back of this after the spin at turn 1 the previous lap, and now trying to get back into the mix. Gets the nose ahead of Lane, but Lane's going to fight this into the corner. It's going to get very tight as they cut him through 3, but through 4 off the curb, and he goes, and Hendricks gets ahead for the time being as they make the way through. Beautiful shot there, everybody roaring their way through the corners, and now Mark Senegal, the next set of drivers there in amongst them, with Ian Hennebury ahead of him, the leader of the AM class, as they all continue to roar their way on through. And as they do, Jack Davis as well for Rockefeller Racing White trying to hold off Samuel Bernardi there as they head up towards the latter half of the Serpentine. But as they make their way on through, meanwhile we've got a spin for other drivers a bit further back. I believe Glenn Bratton has gone around. In fact, he's just dropped behind then what is, I believe, Adam J. Ballard as they make the way through towards turn number 7, 8, 9. And here's a result, Glenn Bratton losing out quite dearly, as meanwhile we look a little bit further back up the order to Samuel Bernardi, who's under pressure here from Francois Schinck. And of course Schinck having taken what was that very early pit stop, and we wonder if that was a scheduled stop or not. Well, Schinck I think decided to go early and give it everything he's got here as they make the way through turn number 11 and down the back straight they go once again. And Schinck could really become an element later on this race, as meanwhile up towards turn number 12 already, Kurt Lane on the inside here versus Micah Hendricks. Hendricks on the left of your picture, Lane on the inside on the right, and as they come through quarter apex there, Hendricks goes on around. He's got to be conscious as Lane of Craig Parks behind him, won't want to let Parks get on through for the fact that they're battling for the championship. As we see there, Lane tries to switch back out of braking into turn number 13, but all he manages to find is the rear bumper of where's Hendricks' car. They're almost trying to say to Hendricks, can you mind getting a move on please, I'm not waiting. And as they make the way into 16 right now, Lane definitely trying to get a move on here, as the fact he's got that building pressure of Parks behind. But from them to a little bit further up the road, we look back to your prime leader here of Edwin Offroad, who's got Logan McKenzie really trying to mount the pressure as they head on down into 19. Well, right now line astern are the quartet as they come on through, as led by James Carr. But you can imagine at any moment one of them may be looking to try and gain the new place in this order as they make their way through the final corner and head onto another lap. Well, they've already turned 4 laps in anger, going on to the 5th one here, and a bit further up front, Carr Ranieri leads this race. We haven't quite seen it on camera, but he's made the pass to Jordan Butler as he takes the lead and makes his way up the hill. You see they're defending hard on the inside run, but as they head on through now, Jordan Butler trying to go all the way around the outside. Ranieri there makes himself as wide as possible, but Butler has to be given some room, and as they come down through 2, Butler coming back at him here as they close their way through 2 into 3, and we jump on board with our 2nd place driver. Now coming through turns 3, 4 and 5 here, you'll get to see from the on-board perspective exactly how Ranieri has to slightly modify his lines. Oh, goodness me, hitting the sausage curve there, the yellow sharp curves, putting it on 2 wheels for a second. Well, I'll tell you one thing, that has not dampened his confidence whatsoever, and normally it's 2 wheels for motorbikes only here when they race MotoGP at the circuit in the Americas, but Carr Ranieri showing that a Toyota 86 can do 2-wheeling as well as they make the way down towards turn number 11. Gets a brilliant run off of turn number 9 as well. Butler's going to be vulnerable here as they make their way into the left-hander, but the thing is, do you want to be the lead car or the rear car as you battle out of this corner? Well, I think right now Ranieri wants to be in the gunning position from P2. He'll get the draft, he'll get a wonderful tow as they make their way down the first quarter of the kilometre, and now that he's building up that speed, gaining little by little, Butler pulls over to the left-hand side here. The DNA Motorsports driver here has it in his blood and his DNA to battle hard, but Ranieri's going to try and go all the way around the outside to be a drag race all the way towards the braking zone. You see behind there Lauzon and Logsdon just watching on, meanwhile in the background and waiting for their opportunity to get into this fight. But as they head onto the brakes here, Ranieri goes for it around the outside, can't quite find it and is covered off. Meanwhile, a bit further back, Edwin Nofre there continues to be under pressure from Logan McKenzie. McKenzie up the inside in the Tide machine and takes the lead of the Prime class. P8 overall as they make their way towards turn number 13. And Nofre, they're going a little bit deep under braking. I think it was a slight error rather than any intention to just let it go, because it looks like the car there was drifting a bit longer beyond the braking zone than anticipated. But meanwhile, as we look back to John Lauzon here, moving around the outside of Ranieri into turn 17. Lauzon now trying to go back on the fight here. Of course, remember, starting on pole. And Lauzon right now, fingers crossed, touch wood, and no commentators curse applying, not having any misfortune other than losing 2 places early on, but not losing sight of the lead whatsoever as they make the way down through turn number 19 into 20. They go once again. Behind you see Aaron Lyon, Jason Landry getting close to one another in the rear of the picture in the battle for P5. But as they come out to turn 20, Lauzon not having the run off the corner, and James Logsdon staying close in return. As we can see up there, Aaron Lyon going a little bit deeper wide off of turn 20. Got to be conscious of those track limits. They will start to accumulate as the race goes on. But as they make the way on up the hill, we look from them to the leader of the AM class here, and it is Mark Senegal who now leads the class ahead of Fernando Takahashi, quite comfortably P13 by a gap there of what is 1.7 seconds over Takahashi. We have Tanner Dibble into the pit lane, and I wonder if that is a scheduled stop there for Dibble or whether there's a sign of something that's gone wrong with the car. But either way, Senegal will continue to hold position quite nicely, as meanwhile Billman DaCosta here on the outside versus Craig Parks, and the Prime driver gaining the ground there on the AM driver as they make the way up towards turn number 1, and things do seem to be settling down in the bottom portion of the field. But meanwhile, looking back up to the very front of the field, Jordan Butler held off Ranieri last time round, but now finds himself under further pressure as they make the way on through turns 8 and 9, coming out of 8 now into the left-hand kick at 9, and as they begin to go down the hill here, you can definitely see how Butler feeling comfortable in that lead position, but at the same time Ranieri really trying to up the tempo as they make the way into the next braking zone. But of course, Lauzon and Logsdon not too far away. Butler again having to defend on the inside, going into the centre of the road, goes a little bit deep off her apex, and that's going to give Ranieri a good run, but not a stronger run this time. You'll notice how Carl Ranieri had to actually bring himself off racing line immediately there and out of the draft through fear of tapping the rear of Butler and giving a bit of a bump draft down the straight. So I think Butler right now is trying to play the long game here of essentially repositioning himself on this straight to give himself the best possible run in the drag race. But as they get ready to battle onto the brakes, we can see they're behind James Logsdon up the inside of John Lauzon as well. So Ranieri on the inside, he's going to get through. Logsdon gives Ranieri a tap on the rear end. Well, that absolutely catapults Ranieri into the lead of the race. Meanwhile, John Lauzon picks up the pieces in return, and Lauzon back up into P2. But he's going to battle on the brakes here as meanwhile Jason Landry comes on through, literally out of left field here, and says don't mind if I do, as they come through 13, 14, 15 and into 16. And Jason Landry, the Sunday GT Turtles driver, well, I think right now he might be contradicting the fact that he is a turtle in terms of the team he represents, but he's racing like the rabbit and the hare, if you will, given the fact he's coming back through the field very fast indeed after that early misfortune. But as he makes his way through 17 and 18, James Logsdon and Aaron Lark continue to stay close, but it has been a complete turnaround of fortune there for James Logsdon after one bit of contact to see him go from battling for P2 to dropping back to P5. As they come through 19 and up towards 20, 15 minutes complete, still a half an hour to go. And of course, with that in mind, and we saw at Long Beach just how important tyre degradation was on the circuits which are more intense to the car's tyres. And I wonder here if some drivers might be starting to think about, do they need to preserve the tyre compound a little bit more and just cool things down slightly as they go into the second, third of this race. Of course, we talk about racing stages here. We have to take the tyre through its degradation cycle with its thermal cycle with that. But everybody really trying to push on here and gain track position early. But I wonder if making this investment so early on may end up, in fact, having a bit of a risk versus reward scenario right at the end of the race when those tyres do not have the grip available. Meanwhile, we tell you that Ian Henneberry has come into the pit lane from at the time what was P19 overall and P5 in the AM class. So we have got a couple more gradual pit stops coming on in, but meanwhile focusing on the battling here as we jump on board with Jason Landry, continue to really hustle at the back of Butler as they make the way into turn number 7, up towards 8 they go, and as they come into the very sharp right hand here of Camber the corner, you can see how Landry falling back a little bit, trying to get the run out to 9 up towards 10, 11, but with the trio in front of him all working into a bit of a concertina motion here, Landry strategy. He really has to settle the move, not just with one car in front of him, but also two. In fact, he has to try and anticipate how Lauzon will approach each corner, how that will affect Butler, and then how he can capitalise on that as he takes a bit too early in apex, then has to snap the steering wheel to his right to avoid a track limit infringement, and as a result, that's cost him a huge amount of time as he's effectively given Butler a 1 second advantage. Meanwhile, they make the way on down further back. You can see there Aaron Lahr battling side by side with James Logston. Lahr on the outside as they head up towards turn number 12, getting ready to go onto the brakes once again here, and it's going to be Lahr this time who really will be capitalising on that toe of what is Landry in front of him. Meanwhile, Lauzon versus Butler. Butler defend on the inside here. Lauzon trying to go around the outside. He can't quite find it. He gets the cutback, however. Coming into 13, he's going to set up another cutback. It's going to be a whole series of cutbacks here from start to finish on the stadium section. And can he find that run to 16 that he so desperately craves here in order to get the move done? Well, through 14 into 15. Lauzon dips the car to the inside there, but he can't quite get the run in. And they stay as they are as they make the way on through 16 into 17. Meanwhile, looking back to your AM leader, well, here is Mark Senegal with P14 overall. He's got growing pressure. Fernando Takahashi behind as the drivers make the way through 13 and 14. Francois Schick just in front, who's recently made his way on through. Schick starting to carve his way back into the top 10 very gradually. Now P13, but this battle for overall P14 and the lead of the AM class continues to close up with Fernando Takahashi. After a difficult opening couple of laps, does seem to have now found the optimum working window for the tyre compound. And as a result, he's trying to push on as James Logston has come into the pit lane. So he's coming just around the 17.5 minute mark. So I think a lot of these pit stops we are seeing are early attempts at undercuts here, and it may bring them right back into the fold at the end of this race. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out in practice. But Mark Senegal at this moment definitely trying to hustle to break away from Fernando Takahashi as they come into turn 20 and conclude this lap. But as they make the way on to the next lap, it has calmed down a little bit in the AM class in general. Got a load of gaps opening up now. But meanwhile, Samuel Bernardi here continuing to push on through. And well, this is the man right now that everybody in the AM class does need to be worried about. Trying to make it 3 wins on the bounce today as he heads up the hill towards turn number 1. And he is currently the fastest man in the AM class by a significant margin. But meanwhile, speaking of one driver here who will not be happy about being around the AM class, it's your pro James Logston for Bear Pope Racing. And this is for the simple reason he's come out the pit lane, hoping to find some clear air, but all he's found is AM's battling for the lead of the class. He's got Fernando Takahashi behind him, who really right now wants to get clear of James Logston, wants James Logston to clear off effectively to give him a run after Mark Senegal, and he's got Mark Senegal in front of him, who he needs to try and find a way on through as they make the way up towards turn at number 11 gradually. And also keep in mind that James Logston has Francois Schick, who's one place further up from Senegal, and he's already taken one pit stop, and I wonder if Francois Schick has already delivered an undercut here in the opening 5 minutes of the race. It means his tyres will be absolutely scorching hot come the end of this race, given the fact he'll have to balance them as much as possible. We're not expecting any tyre changes here, only fuel to go in the car, but in turn, when you do an extended stint on the tyre compound, it does really put a lot of pressure onto that compound. But meanwhile, speaking of drivers under pressure, Logan McKenzie having to defend versus Alvarez, and Onofre heads it's 3 wide under brake, and Alvarez on the inside, McKenzie in the middle, Onofre on the outside, and Alvarez takes the lead on the Pro-Am class. P6 overall he goes as the Pan Am Racing driver here pushes on, and we ride on board and look back, but it's a return move there from McKenzie, who gets his elbows out there as they make the way through turn 13. A little bit damage to the front of the car that you can see, a slight bump, an indent in the front left bumper from the driver's perspective, front right from our picture's perspective, as they make the way through 16 into 17. But these cars can take a little bit of a knock side to side as they make the way into 17 and 18. But as they roll the way on through here, 220 horsepower per car, a whole grand total there, 880 horsepower roaring its way on through down towards turn number 19. And everyone right now keeping their composure as best as possible as James Carr, the yellow pro, in the distance there at the rear of this quartet, also trying to get back into the mix as they make their way to turn 20. Now going through the left-hander this time around, nobody deciding to feint here into the pit lane or reveal their hand at the moment. You can imagine at any moment we could potentially see a revelation in terms of strategy, but meanwhile the race leader here, Carr continues to confound himself with regards to that pressure, as meanwhile behind, Lauzon battling hard on the brakes there versus Landry. Lauzon definitely does not want to lose out to Jason Landry, who really does try to push the tempo, but in doing so he's exposed himself to Aaron Lahr, who returns here around the outside of 2, and as they make the way up towards turns 3, 4, 5 and 6, Lahr doing everything in his power here as you see the quintet making their way up through the signals of corners. Ranieri there on 2 wheels for a brief moment, absolutely loving to dish out and dole it on the curbs as they make the way through turn number 7 into 8 very shortly, but as they roll their way on through up towards 8 now. Lahr at the back of this pack staying with it, but all 5 drivers there all in harmony as they come through 9. I can tell you it's disharmony and they start to battle one another, but all of them on that identical racing line, matching one another for pace. We absolutely love to see it. As they head their way down towards turn number 11, and once again in no exchange at the moment under braking. Meanwhile, Logan McKenzie staying close to the back of Alvarez here, really trying to put the pressure and the run on now as we hear that Nick Bader has come into the pits. We have had one retirement from this race, and that is Albert Brand, as we're to understand it. And we also have had the retirement of John Wilding, it would seem. So we've had 2 retirements in all, but as we see our drivers make the way on down, we look to the top end of the 1 kilometre backstretch, and we can see here Ranieri going defensive in the middle of the road. Butler trying to look around, can't quite find it at the moment. Meanwhile, Lau's on there just defending slightly. I think Lau's on, wondering if he can see an opportunity on the inside there with the top 2 battling hard, but he can't find anything at the moment. Instead, really covering off his assets with regards to that P3 position. Meanwhile, a bit further back, we can see Logan McKenzie still trying to push on Alvarez here, and Onofre just waiting in the wings, and very interesting for Onofre in terms of just sitting there and watching right now, waiting, not really trying to put any further pressure on, but as they make the way on through. Meanwhile, in the AM class, we can see here Mark Senegal continue to hold off Bernardi. In fact, Samuel Bernardi battling with Fernando Takahashi just behind. Takahashi defends the inside into 13. It will Takahashi at one point for MOP Jedi, the Brazilian, really on the offensive, but a little bit of a tank slapper there. Some oversteer coming off at 13, and we can see Bernardi goes through on the inside at turn 14. Into 15 they go, and as they make the way out turn 16, Bernardi gets the move done, and he continues to rise through the field here. Does the 2-1-2 drive as he makes his way into turn 17 and 18. I think, give it a couple more laps, we could see him leading the AM class here, unless Mark Senegal can completely nullify the charge of Bernardi, because right now, I'm not sure what he's had for breakfast this morning, but I can tell you one thing, whatever it is, he has given him a huge boost as he makes his way to turn 20 right now, and heads onto the brakes once again, because the man is looking absolutely unstoppable as he heads up towards turn 1, although Takahashi, I think, is going to try and contradict that in the fact he's going to try and battle it into turn 1. Bernardi covers it off here, he's going to take it all the way to the pit wall, and as they make the way in towards the braking zone, Takahashi is going to be made to go around the outside, but of course, given the amount of width available at turn 1, the amount of run up the hill they've got as well, there's plenty of opportunities for a cutback or a switchback, and in fact, Takahashi goes exactly for the cutback here, but Bernardi just about keeps it together as they make the way off the apex and make the way down towards turn 2, and Bernardi continues to hold on to second place in the AM class, P15 overall. As they make their way now into the serpentine sequence, we look from them to Tanner Dibble a bit further back here, and the DNA Motorsports driver making his way on past very shortly. Daniel Cedeno trying to pass his way past the AM driver here as the pro and gain another place, but it's definitely not been the race he's wanted so far for Dibble, as we've got a number of AMs in the pit lane, including at Billman DaCosta, also at Glenn at Bratton, and also at Bader. In fact, I believe that Nick Bader has been in the pit lane for a very long time. I wonder if something's gone wrong in the pit lane, because it's not been a very fast pit stop at all, and Bader continues to stay in the pits. It's not working out, it would seem, as meanwhile we look from them to Alberto Alvarez here in the battle for the lead of the Pro-Am class, and we're coming down towards turn number 12 again. Onto the brakes they go, and McKenzie this time looking up the inside. Alvarez turns in, it's going to be very close, a little bit of nip and tuck there as they make the way on out, but indeed these 3 drivers continue to test one another right now. I wonder if McKenzie is really trying to get under Alvarez's skin with these moves into turn 12. He's not doing anything wrong, to be fair, he's just simply taking that inside run each and every time. But I think he's trying to test how much Alvarez will fight it under braking, how deep will he go, and in return then how much of a mistake can he put himself at risk of as they make the way to turn 17 and 18. Well, right now Alvarez facing that change well, a little bit of run wide there at turn 16, which is interesting. Going to have to be wary of that, because he will have picked up a track limit infringement for that one and an instant point with it. But as they make their way down towards 19, all 3 drivers they're staying line astern, but you can imagine at any moment we could see a shake-up. And speaking of shake-ups, well, here's your leaders overall and in the pro class right now, and your leader Carr Ranieri still holding on as they make their way across the line and go to the 11th lap under race conditions. And as they head up the hill, well, he's under a lot of pressure right now, is the privateer, but doing everything right in terms of holding on to that position. But for how long can he hold on to it as they make the way up? And you see John Lauzon there really go for the brakes. Lauzon's had enough, he's waited his turn, and now he's going to go for it, spend it all as they make their way down through 1 and into 2, coming down through the right hander here, but he's going to lose the run initially as they make their way up towards turns 3 and 4. Definitely trying to get on the offensive as soon as possible. And as we jump aboard here on the left front suspension, we get to see how much body roll comes with these cars cars as they make their way up through the serpentine. A lovely sequence of corners here. Gives you a real perspective how they're balancing on a knife edge of grip and adhesion as they come into turn number 7 now. And Lauzon really getting close there. Ranieri really bringing the car from left to right, dancing around there, and in the middle, Butler just really as solid as a rock right now. That car looking absolutely rigid, and I think Butler really conscious of the fact that he does not want to let Lauzon through, because Lauzon definitely seems to be the hot-headed missile right now in terms of trying to come through to take the lead of this class as they head into turn number 11. But coming through, Lauzon going a little bit deeper there into the apex, but you'll notice gets it really hooked up nicely as he comes down the gears and back onto the power, and as they charge their way up towards turn number 12. Well, now Butler's going to be given a bit of breathing room here to go on the offensive versus Ranieri, but I think this is what Lauzon's waiting for in terms of the top two fight one another into the next corner. And imagine if they give an elbow to one another and send each other off, then it gives him the opportunity to come on back, and that's sometimes what you can do. It's a game of chess, and you've got to wait and see what your rivals' moves are. As meanwhile, Butler goes up the inside here, Ranieri into turn 12. Ranieri doesn't fight it too hard, looks at the cutback run off of the left-hander, but he's not going to have it as Butler takes the position. Meanwhile, looking a bit further back here in the AM class, well, that's Mark Senegal at the front of this group. Meanwhile, Samuel Bernardi continues to hold on to P2 in the AM class, P14 overall with Fernando Takahashi there, and we do have Jack Davis, who's also in the back of this with also, I do believe there, that is PG Christensen, who is a lap down and also in the back of this group as they make their way down towards turn 12. Bernardi there defending versus Takahashi. Takahashi on the right of him as they make their way into braking from our camera's perspective, left of the driver's perspective, and Mark Senegal loses the rear of the car. He catches it just in time, but Samuel Bernardi comes on through. It's going to be 4 wide into turn 13, and as they come on through, Bernardi gets it done. Jack Davis will really opportunistic move, and Davis, to be fair, following Bernardi through, but he's lost a lot of momentum off of 13, but he's got it done. And the Rockefeller Racing white driver, now that was a brilliant piece of manoeuvring there to take the 2 places in the space of 1 corner and simply capitalise on was the mistake of Senegal and Fernando Takahashi have to very quickly deal with the growing situation of Bernardi coming on through as they make their way down through 17, 18 and into 19. Meanwhile, in the pit lane, we've got Carr, Ranieri and Jason Landry, and as I look out of my commentating box window, so we have had 2 of the top 5 make their way into the pit lane at long last, but some drivers continue to carry on, and Bernardi into the pits here. As soon as he's taken the position, he just wants to be into the pit lane. I wonder whether he now feels as though he can undercut his peers and get the rest of the job done based on pit strategy. Well, if he can here, he's got to have done a bit of fuel save, because I think that's the only way he's going to jump the group given the closeness of the pace. But meanwhile, as we look to Alberto Alvarez here, P4 overall now with all the strategy that is unfolding, still holding off Logan McKenzie and Edwin Ovre, and will Alvarez definitely not be given any luxuries when it comes to backing off or coasting to quarters here with regards to saving a little bit of fuel, and that could be the deciding factor here if the pace is so close. Who has been able to do some fuel saving over the course of the race and therefore leapfrog their opponents into the lead of the class and potentially get ahead enough that way they're safe come the end of the race. Of course, some drivers will try and underfuel in the pits as well, presuming they'll end up being able to fuel save at the end of the race, but that's a gamble in itself, and the fact you may be out front, but you have to fuel save and drop back to a battle, and then you have to fight to the very end there, and have you got enough in the tank? But as they make their way on towards the back straight, and Offred still staying at the back of this group as we jump on board with the middle of the pack Jedi driver and keep it close on all this, but as they come down towards turn number 12, no real opportunity here, and as we look and listen in there, looking at the dashboard, will there be any opportunity you see? In fact, lifting off there really early and just letting the car come down to the low RPM band of 5th gear, and I think that is where Offred and also McKenzie may just be doing that critical fuel saving. But meanwhile, Jack Davis, as we look back to P15 overall, losing out versus Mark Senegal there in the run down through turn number, we believe it's turn 11 into 12. In fact, they made their way down the back straight now, and Davis there after gaining ground, losing some in return. Of course, all this battling between himself, Senegal and Takahashi is only going to cost him race time in relation to Samuel Bernardi, who's come out in P19 and has got himself completely clear circuit in front and behind him. And for Bernardi right now, this could be the antidote to cure this battle for the win in the AM class, because they made their way down into turn 13. Davies here really trying to square off versus James Logston, and Logston, keep in mind, pitted earlier than most in this group, and right now the Bedpoke Racing driver really having to fight his way through past the AM drivers. And I think at this point, whether they want to battle him or not, they're having to try and hold position and stay close to one another. And James Logston, well, he's trying to tip the scales his way, but in the process is losing race time. Meanwhile, Looking back here to Ian Henneberry for Bear Pope Zero, battling for P6 in the M class, P22 overall versus Rodney Felker. Felker down the outside as they make their way onto the brakes for turn number 12. Henneberry's going to go up the inside here. I think this is going to be a relatively straightforward move under braking. He gets it done, but he goes very gingerly there off the brakes into the apex. But in the end, I think Felker just going a little bit overly deep, and Henneberry getting the move done quite nicely to bring himself up to their P6 of the M class and P22 with it. But as they make their way out of the first part of the stadium section on towards the second part, a little bit further up the road, we do look back to Fernando Takahashi, who continues to lead here in the AM class, albeit on track. We don't know if that's the strategy, however. Mark Senegal getting ever closer under braking, and James Logston tries to go around the outside. Logston's added up here as he makes his way onto the power. He gets it done as he comes down to 2. It's a nice move from the American as he rolls his way through the right-hander, and now he's got one more amp to pick his way on past before he chases after Carl Ranieri. But keeping in mind, Ranieri is 9.5 seconds up the road, and that shows you how far back Logston has fallen based on track time and the fact he's had to cut his way through what has been the majority of the midfield Pro-Am and Am pack as he makes his way through turns at 7 into 8 here in Logston's race right now. He's had a lot of pace, but I think the strategy has just completely blunted the charge as he comes through turn number 9. But coming on down the hill and getting ready to battle under braking into turn 11, if not to turn 12 later on, where it's going to be close between these two as they come on through into left-hander. Meanwhile, further up the road, Jason Landry, after clearing it was Carl Ranieri in the pit lane. And in fact, Ranieri a whole 4 seconds back almost. Now Landry getting a nose ahead of Kurt Lane as they make the way in towards turn number 12. They will have Francois Schinke ahead of them by 9/10 as they head into the left-hander, and Landry will get this done under braking quite comfortably, we reckon. Meanwhile, further back, Logston now trying to have the run he so craves up the inside here of Takahashi, but you can see in this drag race only eventually getting the overspeed he needs. And he's going to have to force it under braking. Meanwhile, behind here, we can see that Adam Ballard up the inside of Jack Davis, the two Rockefeller Racing white drivers, trying to settle their differences as they make the way through 12 into 13. Jack Davis on the inside here and trying to hold on to the position as they come on through. But meanwhile, Ballard goes all the way around the outside. And there's Craig Parks also trying to get into the mix here. Parks will want to clear Davis. So that way he's got a clear run on his Pro-Am rival. Parks looks up the inside. And you can see that Davis with a little bit of a weave and a wobble coming into 16. Just trying to get the car down the gearbox too aggressively, and as they make their way to 17, 18, it's going to be too wide all the way through the long right as they come down towards 19. A bit of contact between the two of them. Parks there being knocked slightly wide. Davis in return losing speed, holding the inside, and Parks has to back out as they come down into 19, or does he? Goes for under braking in. Davis turns in. He has to keep the steering open a little bit. Parks still got his nose in as they come out the corner. However, he has to back off. But Takahashi into the pit lane. Mark Senegal into the pit lane as well. Davis into the pit lane. So now we will see where Samuel Bernardi comes out in all of this. And in fact, where is Samuel Bernardi? Here he is as he makes his way into turn number 19. And given how close he is before they've come into the pit lane, my gut feeling says that right now the privateer is going to jump ahead and take the lead of the AM class, and there's going to be at least 5 seconds of a gap as he makes out the corner. Davis already leaving the pit box, and we can see here, in fact, he's overshot his pit box there and is able to reset himself in the pit lane. Meanwhile, Mark Senegal comes on through, but Samuel Bernardi heading up the hill, and as they make their way through, that gives you perspective. As you can see, they'd only come off the pit meter line now, and Samuel Bernardi takes the lead of the AM class, and in the end, it is a margin of what is 3.5 seconds as he heads on down the hill. The privateer has made this work on strategy with 11 minutes to go, and now Mark Senegal and Fernando Takahashi are either going to have to avoid battling one another to catch up, or they're going to be battling for P2 and not the win of this race as they come on through the Serpentine. And you can see that is the difference in strategy, where Bernardi just went a couple of laps earlier, steered clear of fighting, and then gave himself all the track position he needed, clear space to run the laps. And meanwhile, Senegal and Takahashi, both on identical strategies, have tied themselves to one another, and in doing so have tied themselves up for the battle in P2 in class. But given the gap at the moment, in fact, Bernardi opened that gap up to 5 seconds, a little bit further there as our timing's been updated. Now they're up to full pace, and that goes to show you just how much time can be lost under battling as they come down through turn number 10. Senegal there continuing to have to really dig in here as Takahashi looks the inside, can't find it. Senegal covers him off, so instead goes to the outside and looks at the drag race off the corner. But as they make their way onto the 1 kilometre stretch, Senegal goes round to the car, loses grip on the rear tyres. It's unfortunate he can get it turned back around. He's still got plenty of time. The next driver in class, Daniel Sedino, is a whole 12 seconds back, but it's a very unfortunate moment there for the Sunday GT Turtles driver, and in the end it's just a little bit too much of a push right towards the end. But meanwhile, we look back up to Alberto Alvarez here, holding on to the prime lead at the moment. And keep in mind, we've still got 10 minutes to go, and our top 8, ranging from Jordan Butler all the way down to Micah Hendricks on the time tower there on the left-hand side of your screen, they have yet to pit. We are waiting for the pit stop. They are mandated to pit, give them the fuel, unless they found some magical way to make that fuel tank last as long as it can potentially, as we see that Kirk Lane's coming to the pit lane. And as they make the way down from 1 into 2, well, Alvarez at this point doing everything he can. Well, I do wonder, the longer he's running as leader of the Prime class, where he's effectively just gifting a fuel advantage to McKenzie and Onofre, because Onofre has stayed right behind this battle. He's never once shown signs of really tempting or teasing out a potential move. Meanwhile, McKenzie has completely been of a different mindset, which is he's been on the back of Alvarez non-stop like an absolutely bad rash. And in doing so, I think McKenzie has just been pushing Alvarez along, but also doing some fuel saving in his own in between those moments where he can take the tempo down slightly, with Alvarez being so focused on trying to break away. As McKenzie runs a little wide there at turn number 9, it's not going to cost him too much, but as they come down towards turn number 11, it does look as though Onofre and McKenzie may just have the strategic advantage when they come into the pits. Now, we would expect the pit stop's got to be within the next 1 to 2 laps, given the fact they'll take us up to the 40-minute mark come the end of the next 2 laps, including this one, and they won't have the fuel tank to get them right to the end, or if they do, well, goodness me, I'll be made to mark and eat my words. But as they head on down the 1 kilometre stretch, meanwhile, we look to the front of the field here. Jordan Butler, we're in a bit of a lonely lead at the moment for DNA Motorsports. Well, with loneliness comes advantage here in the fact that he's not got to worry anymore about having to battle. Instead, he can focus on just managing the car, as meanwhile, Aaron Law and John Lauzon sit behind. Logan McKenzie continues to just sit behind Alvarez. He took a peek there into turn number 12, but as the trio there make the way on through into turn 13, McKenzie right now, I think, really is setting himself up a treat and a storm here, albeit Onofre will be the one big unknown behind, as Alvarez has to go defensive into 14-15. McKenzie definitely getting Alvarez to go all out of sorts here, and it is forcing them backwards, but with it, all it's doing is causing Alvarez to take more life out of the car, and particularly those tyres as they head into 17-18. We're going through the long right as we continue to watch all of racing here. We give you an update regards to Tanner Dibble. Meanwhile, he's continued to try and find his way and fight his way through the AM field. He's still got 3 more AMs to go, including Mark Senegal, who's in front of him there. But Dibble really has had the challenge of picking his way through the field after the early moment of the race. But meanwhile, our top 6 are all into the pit lane. And I think we've also got our top 8 into the pit lane. They've all taken the fuel tanks as long as they can, as Jordan Butler comes down towards his pit box shortly. And now the big question, of course, is where is everybody going to emerge? Well, as we look to Jason Landry here as he makes his way into turn 20, keeping in mind, of course, that Landry was one of the first in the lead pack to come into the pits. Well, as he comes across the timeline, it's looking good for Landry. He's already picking up the places here. John Butler's left his pit box. In fact, as we look to our camera here, you can see Butler coming out the pit lane. It's going to be very close here as they make the way up the hill. Logan McKenzie, meanwhile, has jumped all the way clear of his prime counterparts, but Jordan Butler defends on the inside of pit exit, but Landry's got the better run off of the opening hairpin, and Jason Landry, with the strategy, has taken the lead of this race with only 6.5 minutes to go, plus the final lap. Francois Schink as well has fought his way back into this fight as they make the way on through the Serpentine of 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. But as they come through turn 6, then head into left-hand of 7 very shortly. You can see now how the field has been redistributed by the pit stops, and Logan McKenzie in all of this has moved up to P6. He's now got James Carr between himself and Edwin Onofre, and he's put 3 seconds of race time between himself and Onofre. That is how much he has gained, as meanwhile Alberto Alvarez has had it all go wrong on the exit of turn 1. The Pan Am Racing driver, he's had it go from good to bad to disastrous in the space of 1 pit stop on the exit of 1 corner, and now he's got Fernando Takahashi and Adam Ballard behind him, and Ballard's the key threat, of course, given the fact that Ballard is in the Prime class, Takahashi in the AM class. But that is how they've shaken up in the field, and meanwhile James Carr with a mistake at turn 11 as we see him picking up speed again, losing the place to Micah Hendricks there, and also losing the place to what is Edwin Onofre as he drops down to P9 overall. So it's late drama here at COTA, as meanwhile Aaron Law really now does try to take the Texas 2-step into turn 12 as he looks up the inside here, and boy, in fact being looked up the inside, we should say, by Francois Schink. There's contact between the two of them there, albeit Schink backing out, and I think just a small rub from panel to panel, nothing major, as they cover through turn 13 as they roll the way through the double right. Now coming down towards 16 they go, and you can see here the quartet trying to break away from John Lauzon. and Lau's on fending off what is Logan McKenzie behind as they head up towards turn at number 17-18, but it's Landry's to lose as he makes his way through the long right, and after this lap he will have 2 more laps to go based on recognition of the lap time being an average of 2.5 minutes. And can Landry bring it all the way to line? I think he can, given the fact he has shown a huge amount of control of this race, albeit Jordan Butler will be there right at the end looking to try and take it off of him should Landry become complacent. But the thing is, Landry and complacency are 2 words that you never hear in the same sentence. When the man's got his teeth between it, he absolutely goes for it as he makes his way up towards turn 1 once again. And in fact, it looks like Aaron Lahr here taking a look into turn 1 versus Jordan Butler. He's very close here, close enough to reach out, touch the rear wing, and as they made away, there was a bit of contact there as Lahr looks to cut across, but he's covered by Butler. Puts on the outside here, Butler defends. Meanwhile, going in very hot from behind, that's Francois Shink, and there's contact there between Aaron Lahr, Butler, and Shink comes in as well. It's full steam ahead, and John Lauzon just rolls on through between the carnage and picks up P2, and Logan McKenzie also sails through here. Well, the 2 drivers have given themselves every opportunity, and McKenzie right now, well, this is going to be a huge haul of points here today. If he finishes P3 overall, it's going to be the win the Pro-Am class, which gives him 3 bonus points as well, and a top 3 finish overall is huge in terms of his opportunity. Meanwhile, Aaron Lahr here will be absolutely fuming at how that played out as he's been wounded one of the most as he makes his way in towards turns 8 and 9 now, and he's dropped behind Edwin Offred. As they make the way through turn number 9, Offred, they're struggling a little bit off the corner. Apit's got to be careful the car doesn't snap on him. And meanwhile, Adam Ballard there making the move on Takahashi for P16 overall, but Takahashi trying to get the run round the outside to turn 2. Can't quite find it as both drivers there could press their way on the suspension up towards 3, but in the rise now it does look as though it settles down between the 2 of them for a brief moment. As we go a bit further back, we can see here Mark Senegal under pressure from Tanner Dibble as the Pro tries to pick his way past the AM as they make the way into turns 5 and 6, but right now Senegal doing everything in his power just to keep it smart and keep it on track with regards to position as they make the way up towards 7, 8 and 9, but as they come on through the tightening sequence of quarters, I think Dibble will have to wait his turn, as meanwhile we look from them to a bit further back to Rodney Felker here, who in fact trying to hold off what is their Nick Bader in the battle for P10 in the AM class and P26 overall. There's a lot happening in the front, but there's also a lot happening towards the back of the field currently, and that's Billman DaCosta ahead of them there in P9 in AM, P25 overall, as this trio continues to fight its way towards the very end of the race, and we're all looking to pick up some key points here right at the end of their big State Cup campaigns. But as they come down from turn 1 into 2, Felker there looking a little bit vulnerable versus Bader, is looking up the inside, but no real door there, no opportunity, just having to wait and see what he can create for himself a bit later on the lap as they tiptoe their way through the next sequence of quarters here, try to keep it composed, but as they head on up, meanwhile Mark Senegal in the battle here versus Dibble. Dibble's going to go down the inside into turn 12 on the back stretch, and as they hit the left-hander here, well, Senegal gives up the place, albeit I think you'll be conscious of the fact that Daniel Sedino is getting closer and closer, and the gap to what is your P4 AM driver now standing at only 1.1 seconds for the last spot of the podium driver as the Sunday GT Turtles machine continues to fight on. But as they fight their way to the next corner, meanwhile we look from them back to Rodney Felker at Billman DaCosta here. Felker looking up the inside, DaCosta gives all the space, and well, I think he sees it coming, but what he also may not have seen is that Nick Bader is now immediately just going to come charging off the corner there, but now it's going to be all about who picks up the draft the most. So you can see there Felker initially gifting the toe to DaCosta, but as they make their way further and further halfway down, so the leaders have gone on to the final lap of today, and we can see here Bader now being given a little bit of a toe, but he's got the overspeed here, and it's DaCosta on the right. It's going to be Bader on the left from the perspective of our camera right now. Invert shortly as they head to the braking zone. Bader on the inside. He's going to go all in here, and I think DaCosta is going to have to try and carry the speed. Well, he gets it hooked up on the braking, but there DaCosta just cannot seem to find enough momentum off the corner, and Bader takes the position off him in a nice move. Meanwhile, we look here to Aaron Lahr and Edward Offred. In fact, Aaron Lahr going very slowly off the turn 9 apex. I wonder if there's a slowdown or just a mistake there for Aaron Lahr. As meanwhile, a bit further back, James Carr has gone round. Oh, goodness me. And what on earth has happened to James Carr's car as he brings the car back on through there? We can't give you a replay of that. That's at turn 6. And he's definitely got a major wound on the front of that Toyota, if not elsewhere on the car. But meanwhile, as he heads towards the end of this final lap, we look to the drivers who are nearing the run down the back straight, coming to its conclusion. And John Lauzon here in a two-way battle for P2 overall versus Logan McKenzie, defending into turn number 12 here on the inside. He's got to be careful picking up too much power. Hits the inside curbing there, and he gets it hooked up just about. McKenzie can't find his way through. Instead, has to cut back and look around as they head through turn 13. But as they come through the right-hander here, Lauzon continuing just to simply park this car right now and make sure that McKenzie's got no room to manoeuvre. But he loses the rear of the car slightly there. Takes a huge amount of cup of the apex, and with that, it's going to be a slowdown. And I believe Logan McKenzie will jump into P2 there with a very last-minute mistake from John Lauzon. But as they made their way through turn 17 and 18, it's a battle for P2 that's concluded. But there's not going to be a battle for the win, because this man right now has only got one corner between him and the checkered flag. It has been a flawless run to the start of the race. It was flawless on strategy, and it will be without a fault as he comes to line. Jason Landry returns to the series to take the win at the Circuit in the Americas in round 4 in the Big State Cup, ahead of Logan McKenzie there, P2, and the prime winner as well, ahead of the pro John Lauzon, who concludes on the podium there, P3, and a brilliant drive for the Bivas Energy driver. P4 for Jordan Butler as he comes to line, and there's Edwin Offer who comes on home, P5, as he makes his way on through. Aaron Lyle will be P6 ahead of Carr Ranieri there, and it'll be Micah Hendricks in what is, I believe, P9, as we've got a little bit of confusion on the stands. In fact, Franz Schick has already finished his race, we should point out. P7 James Logston, P10, and there's Craig Parks, PLM. Kirk Lane will come through very shortly to take P12 of Bear Pope 0, and a great drive from Lane, and then it will be James Carr, and this man making it a triplet of wins in the AM class, Samuel Bernardi, P12, P14 overall in another superb drive. Did it on strategy today, just as much as pace and consistency. Alberto Alvarez P15, Adam Balov P16, Fernando Takahashi P2 in the AM class, P17 overall ahead of Tanner Dibble, and it will be very shortly to complete the top 20 overall. Mark Senegal and Daniel Sedano, as Senegal crossed the line there on the third spot of the AM podium ahead of Sedano, who it was just not to be for today in terms of being on the podium, but a good drive from the Hassel's Motorsports driver ahead of Jack Davis, who crosses their P5 in class, and then P22 overall in Henneberry, who comes out the final corner here in a good drive for the Bear Pope 0 outfit, heading on through, and then Dan Vitchuk very shortly will make his way to the end of his race as he comes on down the final stretch here into the final corner, and the privateer will having a great fight at the start of the race and keeping his head down, and with it all the way to the finish, he'll pick up what is P7 in the AM class, P23 overall, ahead of Auguste Blondel, and the Hassel's Motorsports driver not having a strong race today, but at the same time a consistent one with it, and bringing up a good result ahead of Nick Bader, who comes to the timeline, and as he makes his way through the corner, we've got a bit more drama right on the final corner. There's Billman Da Costa goes round for a brief moment, but he manages to snatch it back together and not lose any further places. P26 overall for the 283 driver, and then Rodney Felker will finish P27, and then we do have approximately 30 seconds before our final driver who finishes on the lead lap will come on through, and that will be Glenn Bratton here, who makes his way in the privateer machine through turn 17 and 18. It's not been the day he's wanted today for Glenn Bratton, but still, he hasn't given up all the way to the very end, and as he makes his way through 19 down towards 20, well, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish, and everybody who gets to the finish line is a winner in their own regard as he makes his way to the timeline there. We've also had PG Christensen finish P29 2 laps down, and we've also had Albert Brand with that retirement 9 laps on the finish, and the immediate retirement of John Wilding. About 31 starters, 29 finishers, and 28 of them on the lead lap. But what a thriller from start to finish. Logan McKenzie, they're doing some donuts. Absolutely pleased with P2 overall, and also the win in the Prime class, and that will set him up beautifully for what is to come in the next Cup of the season. And I think with that result, he will definitely be confirmed as your Cup winner in the Big State Cup in the Prime class. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at those race results. They are subject to stewards' inquiries, of course, albeit the stewarding has been completed. And here come the results. Well, we can see it there. Jason Landry in the end taking the win by 5.4 seconds for Sunday GT Turtles over Logan McKenzie in P2. The Pro winner followed up by the Prime winner there, the Privateer in the Tide Motorsport car, with a superb result finishing 1 second clear of John Lauzon, the Beavers Energy driver. A little bit misfortune at the end, cost him P2, but at the same time, I think John Lauzon will look back at this race and whilst he'll kick himself for losing P2, he'll also be proud of the fact that with everything that happened, he kept clear of all the danger and drama until the very last lap, lap to bring on home what was a space on the podium, and it was the third spot in the end in P3. Jordan Butler there, P4, P3 in the Pro class for DNA Motorsports, and a good drive from Butler, but outfoxed the strategy today, and also that instant turn number 1 cost him dear right at the end, albeit not his fault. He was just a victim in the scenario, with then Edwin Offred, P5 there, a overall top 5 for the middle of the pack Jedi driver, a good run of form, and also a P2 in the Pro class, ahead of Aaron Lahr, the privateer, and Carr, the privateer, P6, P7. And then James Logston, P8 there for Bear Pope Racing, ahead of Craig Parks, P9, the privateer, and then Kirk Lane for Bear Pope 0, completing the top 10. And we should point out that Craig Parks, the final spot of the Pro-Am podium, going to him. Best of the rest in P11 there, James Carr, the privateer, ahead of fellow privateer and AM winner for today, Samuel Bernardi, and a great drive where he made it work on strategy and also outright pace. Now, Alberto Alvarez, P13 for Pan Am Racing, ahead of Rockefeller Racing White's Adam Ballard. And then we have completed the top 15 at Fernando Takahashi for MOP Jedi, the Brazilian driver there, also picking up P2 in the AM class. P16 to Francois Schenck with a late instant there, costing him very dear and dropping him down the order. And Micah Hendricks the same there, P17 for Beaver Buzz Energy. And then DNA Motorsports' Tanner Devil completing the top 18. And as we continue down the order here, Mark Signal P19 for Sunday GT Turtles, ahead of Daniel Sedin of Hassel's Motorsports. And Mark Signal there completing the AM podium. And we're going to continue the run through the entire order, of course, because all our drives being scored based on overall position. But we can see then Mark Senegal, P19, ahead of Daniel Sedino, completing that top 20. And then outside the top 20, P21, Jack Davis there for Rockefeller Racing White, and a great result for the 208 drive. Some great moves as well. Couldn't quite get on the podium, but still he'll be pleased with how he performed today. In Henneberry there for Bear Pope 0, P22 ahead of Dan Vitchett, with Gus Blondell and Nick Bader completing the run to P25. Next Bear Pope 0 is Billman DeCosta, P26 ahead of Rodney Felker and Glenn Bratton, and behind them we can see at P29 PG Christensen for middle of the pack Sith, ahead of Albert Brand for middle of the pack Jedi, and then John Wilding there, of course, not able to make it to the grid due to technical issues with the car, and Albert Brand with that early retirement. Those were our two drivers who may be classified as non-finishers, given the fact they did not complete half the race distance. And PG Christensen and P29 the only driver to finish 2 laps down at the very end. Fantastic racing for our drivers from start to finish, and congratulations to all of our drivers for a fantastic big State Cup run over the first 4 rounds of the season. But now the big question, of course, is, ladies and gentlemen, well, with that, how did the Big State Cup conclude, and who are our Cup champions for the first of the 3 Cups in the Cruising USA GR86 Championship? Well, we can start off then by announcing the end of Cup standings for all the Pro class, and after 4 rounds of racing, James Carr on 161 points is your Cup winner by 6 points over Aaron Lahr in a brilliant run of form. James Carr holding it off to the line ahead of Aaron Lahr there, who managed to finish ahead of Jason Landry based on result countback, but Landry jumping back up into P3 there, ahead of Micah Hendricks and James Logston. Carl Ranieri P6 and 115 points, 2 clear Francois Schenck, with Tanner Dibble, John Lauzon and Jordan Butler completing the run of the top 10. But you can see how close it is, and also keep in mind, let's just remind you, these points you're seeing right now, they don't just apply to the Big State Cup. This is also the overall Drivers' Championship after 4 rounds, and these are confirmed points. All the jury decisions have been done, and what this means is we effectively have a top 5 that is only separated by a margin of 37 points. That is a 1 race swing that could occur at any point, and outside the top 5 we then have the next 5 drivers separated by 5 points. We have a rivalry inside the top 10 that's absolutely intense, and that's just the Pro division, we should point out. That's not the entire field. This is just the Pro class, but James Carr, the man at the front, and on a mission to win the Pro Championship, and right now picking up the first Cup of the season, with Jerome Bagilas there outside the top 10, Besser SP 11 on 81 points, with 5 clear of Mateo Georgiou, not in attendance today, either of the pair. We see Carlos Vila there, still on 0 points as well, not in attendance as of this round. And then coming on to the Pro-Am class, we can see here with that P2, Logan McKenzie bringing home the Big State Cup in the Pro-Am class there by 16 points over Alberto Alvarez. And credit to Alvarez, he did everything he could to win, but Logan McKenzie absolutely frustrated Alvarez into a corner on strategy where he made Alvarez use more fuel, and McKenzie made the jump in the pits with a 5, in fact, what was in the end, a 6-second swing in terms of fuel time spent, and as a result, McKenzie there running away with the Cup right at the end. Craig Parks in P3, 133 points, definitely one to watch out for as we go deeper into this season. I wonder if a Cup is coming his way, with Edwin Offred also a big sign there of what's to come, 115 points, and then Donald Stepek in P5 on 87 points. Not in attendance today, but also a very fast driver that everyone has to watch out for. Jonathan Ballard in at P6 there on 75 points, only ahead of Kurt Lane based on result countback, with Samuel Cran at P8 and Milan Harris and Ilya Speaker completing the top 10. And then we can see best of the rest there, Adrian Fedorowski in P11 on 30 points, one clear of Lee Porter, with Christopher Tarango and Carlos Hathcock completing the championship and cup standings. Jermaine Warren, John Wilding and Justin Wiley yet to get 80 points on the board. Of course, we talked about our pros, we talked about our primes. Now, what about our AM class? Well, we can see then, ladies and gentlemen, it is confirmed that with a trio of wins back-to-back, Samuel Bernardi is your AM Big State Cup champion there by what is only 5 points over Daniel Sedino. But it's been the run of form over the last 3 races that has meant the privateer has surged into lead. But of course, with that win, and congratulations to him, now comes the unenviable task of being the favourite round to round in the second cup in the Midwest Cup. And will he be able to continue that run of form? Daniel Sedino there, blighted today by a few incidents which cost him dear, but he's only 5 points off the pace, with Fernando Takahashi also a further 4 off, and Mark Senegal a further 5 points behind. We definitely do have a top 4 that is close together, and it could swing either way from round to round. But it'd be rude of us to count out Jack Davis there, the Rockefeller Racing White driver, who definitely showed a lot of pace today and also a lot of tenacity in battling. And there he's in a deserved P5, 94 points ahead of Gus Blondell, with Dan Witchuk, Ian Henneberry, Billman DaCosta and Nick Bader completing the top 10. And again, a very similar scenario here. You can see how the top 5 effectively separated by a margin of 29 points. But then Jack Davis in that middle ground of having to balance trying to get into the top 5, and in fact, get into the top 4, we should say, versus holding on to his spot inside the top 5, with then between himself and what is Nick Bader there in P10, a margin of only 28 points. It's unenviable for Jack Davis. He's definitely got to put his foot down and earn the right to stay in that P5 position, if not move forward, albeit I think he's gone a long way today to proving he has that right. Best of the rest there, Rodney Felker in P11, and only outside the top 10 based on result countback. Also keep him in mind, with Glenn Bratton not too far off, and Roger Ganesh, PG Christensen and Ines Usul completing the run through the top 15. And it's Dan Ocaranza, Albert Brown and Spencer Cocaine who complete the run to 18th, with Elias Montanez and also Tony Montanez yet to compete in this series and pick up points. As we then come on to what is the team standings after this cup, albeit we're going to give you an update on the team's championship, but there's no prizes for the leading team after 4 rounds. We can see that Sunday GT Turtles now leading the way and continue to lead the way by a margin that has not really improved, by only 23 points over Beaver Buzz Energy. We're middle of the pack Jedi there, still P3 on 249 points, 20 clear of Team Bear Pope, with DNA Motorsports moving into P5 then 222, ahead of Pan Am Racing, but Pan Am Racing are very closely followed by Hassholes Motorsports, only 1 point between the two teams, but they're 20 points clear of Bear Pope 0, with Rockefeller Right and Rockefeller Pink completing the top 10, and then best of the rest, middle of the pack Sif ahead of QZ Motorsports. And that completes the team's championship standings after 4 rounds of 12. But then let's just remind you then, ladies and gentlemen, and congratulations to our Cup Championship winners in the Pro class, the number 17 driver of James D. Carr. It's the trio of privateers here in the Pram class. It's the 104 of Logan McKinsey. And in the AM class, it's the 212 of Samuel Bernardi. Now, for winning the Cup, what this will mean is from a prize perspective, if we are not mistaken, they will have won $5 for their Cup crowns. Congratulations to them, and we look forward to seeing whether they can make it 2 cups out of 2 when they make their way into the next 4 rounds in the Midwest State Cup. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll try to get a breather, and it's time for us to take a breather as we say thank you very much for watching. And if you have enjoyed today and you want to know more about the Middle of the Pack Racing League community, the MPRL, then why not check us out either on our official Discord, invite link available on screen there if you want to get to the very heart of the racing action, or indeed if you've been watching today and thinking you want to be on the grid in the GR86 Toyotas and get in amongst the Vics, and every skill level is welcome in this series, of course, we'll do head to the Discord because we're a very open community. We're always welcoming newcomers, and indeed we'd love to have you with us. And also there, if you don't want to join our Discord but you do want to stay in touch, then why not follow us on Twitter at our web address at twitter.com/MOP Racing, where you can keep up to date with all the latest trials and tribulations of the MOP esports teams, but also the upcoming leagues and series we have over the course of 2023. But of course, speaking of things that are upcoming, our drivers will get a week's break, but when they return, they'll be returning for round number 5 as we get the Midwest State Cup underway, and we'll be heading to the state of Indiana for the one and only Brickyard, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And whilst we'll be seeing the racing action occur on what will be Wednesday Wednesday, the 15th of February 2023. We'll bring it to you as if it were live on Saturday, the 18th of February. We have seen the dust settle in the Big State Cup. We have seen rivalries ignited across the three classes. We've not seen any runaway drivers at all. It is nip and tuck, whether it be inside the top 5, the top 10 or outside of it. And can anybody start to assert dominance as we make our way into the second third of the season? We'll pick up the story then, but until then, we have been the Middle of the Pack Racing League. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, have a great rest of your weekend. Remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, as always, remember to stay on track. Good night.